Alright, this is the second video from the little question and answer session that I initiated on my Facebook. I was, I had some free time this morning, so I posted a status on my Facebook basically inviting anyone on my friends list to ask any questions that they may have regarding my transition or my being transgender. And wow, I got some really awesome questions, so I'm really glad that I decided to do that, and I'm really grateful that I've been blessed with some really great friends that are just really awesome abstract thinkers and very intelligent. So I'm going to jump right into the second question. This question, he says, I am extremely supportive of trans, but sadly, despite all my education, I am the most ignorant. I beg to differ. The crux of my question is cognitive. How did you reconcile what you were on the outside in order to understand who you really were or are on the inside? Wow, that's a great question. And basically, I'm going to answer it by kind of explaining my history, when I had my realization, and what I chose to do after having that realization. So just real quick, brief history, and I know you and I have known each other since we were like fetuses, but just to kind of refresh your memory. As a child, I was definitely a tomboy. The best example I can think to give is when I was about 5 years old. I very matter-of-factly looked at my mother and my grandparents, whom we were living with at the time, and told them that when I grew up, I was going to get my boobies cut off and get my hair cut like Mr. T so that I could be a man. And that was my first verbal expression of some kind of incongruency with my biological gender and my internal gender. And you know, there's all the typical things. I preferred to play with what are considered male toys, but I would also play with what are considered female toys, but again, I won't go into that. That's a whole other video. So I displayed a lot of the typical signs that come with being transgender. I don't really like to harp on that because everyone is different and not everyone displays typical signs. So just bear that in mind. But anywho, my childhood, that was it in a nutshell. Mr. T was my hero, and you know, I was gonna have my boobies cut off and get my hair cut like Mr. T so I could be like the ultimate guy, because in my mind as a child, he was the ultimate man. I pity the fool. But anyway, teenage, adolescence hit. I was okay until I was about 14, and my body started to change. You know, I'm thankful I was a late bloomer, but unfortunately I bloomed at all. You know, my breasts started to develop and my figure started to feminize, and that was really, really distressing for me. I didn't like that body. I hated the way it looked in the mirror. I hated the attention that I started receiving. I mean, I'm not saying I was like super hot and had like all the boys after me, or you know, girls, but it did generate some attention. Teenage boys will be teenage boys, and I really, really hated that. I went out of my way to dress conservatively, like I'm talking turtlenecks. Like I liked to be covered. I liked to be in baggy clothing because I didn't like the silhouette of my body. Just basically anything and everything that my body was doing as an adolescent, I hated, and it was very distressing. I was a very angry, troubled teen. Then I discovered the concept of being lesbian. I had always been attracted to females. I'd always felt drawn to them physically and sexually. So I thought, well, this must be it. This must be what I am. I'm a lesbian. And I mean, I came out as a lesbian at, I was 14 or 15. And I, jumped into that full force, embraced it wholeheartedly. I had had my hair cut short as a young child, but I got it cut even shorter. Started shopping in the men's section, which was liberating in its own sense. And then I was, God, how old was I? I thought about this. I think I was about 22 or 23 maybe. A couple of friends and I went on a trip to New York. Very exciting. One of the days that we were there, we went to Christopher Street, I believe, which is the gay section of New York City. And we were in this little hole-in-the-wall bookstore that was on a corner. And, I mean, it was a glorious bookstore. It was like 2 or 3 stories, I think, and just this wonderful assortment of books that, I had never seen in my life, never heard of, being from a small town in Texas. So, I was just kind of walking around in wonder. And, of course, we gravitated to the gay and lesbian section, and we were perusing, and I happened to see this book of photography, and I enjoy photography and looking at photography. And so I opened the book, and it turns out to be a collection of photography of trans men. I can't recall the name of it, sorry, and I don't recall if it was all one trans man or if there was several or anything of that nature. I just remember flipping through it, and I came to this one picture that was it was a double-page layout, and, this trans guy was pretty muscular, and he was doing, like, a flex pose, and I saw his top surgery scars, and it was, well, I saw his no-no bits, and I think I read the caption for the picture or something to that effect, and it mentioned, transgender, FTM, so on and so forth, and I just stared at this picture, and it hit me. It was very jarring and very sudden that's what I needed to do. That is what I had been seeking. That was the answer to this question that I had been living with and existing with. The only way I can think to describe it is just, no matter how happy you are, how fulfilled you are in what you're doing and who you're with, there's always this small or big, however you want to think of it, empty space in here, and it aches. It ached constantly. It was painful, and it felt like I never had a full grasp on my life, or my relationships, because, I realized that I wasn't interacting with people as myself. I didn't feel like myself. So I felt like, those relationships were subsequently not false, but not complete. There wasn't a feeling of completion. Yeah, so saw that, had that realization, had that epiphany, and it scared the ever-loving shit out of me. So I threw the book back on the shelf and tucked that away in the back of my head and went on with my life. Now, anyone that knows me knows that I've always adored drag queens, and part of the reason that I have adored them is their courage, and because that's not an easy thing to do, to perform as a drag queen and to live life as a drag queen. And I still do admire them a great deal, but in retrospect, I realize that I was really drawn to anyone that gender bended or toyed with the ideas of gender expression, and now I understand why. It's because I was longing to play with my gender, and to delve into that and discover what my gender identity really was. As a young person, I didn't really have the knowledge to understand what I was craving. So thankfully, as an older adult, obviously, I have that knowledge and am now living my life as I see fit. And I was watching a show on Logo while I was living in Houston. It was called Trans-American Love Story, and basically it was a bachelorette type show, and the woman that was trying to choose her bachelor was a trans woman named Calpurnia Adams, who is, by the way, an awesome performer. So if you haven't ever looked her up, go look up some of her videos on YouTube. She's really great, really funny, very down to earth. But anywho, so trans woman, and there were, I don't know, 8 to 10 bachelors that were vying for her attention. And it just so happened that one of those men is transgender. And I didn't realize that the first few episodes because he was stealth. And then I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th episode, he came out to some of the housemates as trans, and I remember, you know, I was probably like this close to the TV because I would have never known, you would have never known that he was born biologically female. And again, another piece of the puzzle kind of fell into place for me, and there was just this sense of elation, and I realized that whatever he had done, whatever path he had taken, that's what I needed to do. I needed to look in the mirror and see those changes happen, and to see a male form and a male face. And if he could do that, then damn it, so could I. And at that point, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in my life. I still have trouble articulating that moment and that feeling, but it was wonderful. And for whatever reason, I'm not really sure why, it wasn't terrifying to me at that point, and I immediately got online and started researching, and I just buried myself in information and educated myself about being transgender and what that means for me, and how I wanted to express my gender, and the steps I wanted to pursue to transition. And I came out in December of 2008. I've been on T for over 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and you know, obviously you knew me beforehand, so you can see and hear the changes for yourself. And I do not deny my female side. I do not deny the fact that I was born a female. I embrace the fact that I was socialized as a female for 28 years. I'm grateful for that experience. And, you know, Gabrielle, which is my birth name, she's not dead, she's not gone, she's still in here and up here, she's still with me. I will always carry her with me. And that's just my personal experience. Not every trans guy feels that way, but I do, and I don't begrudge anyone in my life remembering her, or, you know, when they tell stories about pre-trans, pre-Gavin, like, I don't even really get upset that they use that name or they use female pronouns, because at the time, you know, that's who I was, and that's how I was moving through the world. So I was able to reconcile Gabrielle with Gavin very easily, and I'm grateful for that, because I think together we make a pretty awesome human being. I know that was kind of rambly, but that's my typical, that's what I do when I make videos. I don't really stop and think about what I want to say. I just kind of say it as the thoughts come to mind, because I like my vlogs to be kind of conversational. So But I realize that in rambling, sometimes I kind of miss what I was trying to say, or I don't really make a point as well as I wanted to. So, wow, this video is 15 minutes. If I didn't answer that question for you, then let me know, and I will make another go of it, or, you know, we can just message on Facebook, or we could even call each other. I'm just saying. Yeah, and you've got another question that I have to answer, so be watching for that one. But anywho, I'm going to move on to the next question. See y'all soon.